problems, and we'll have some time at the end to answer your questions. And you can also write any answers or immediate questions in the chat box as well. So I will hand over to Annalie, who'll kick things off. So thank you very much, Annalie.
Okay, hi everybody, and just before I start, sorry that you didn't get the marks you needed in writing, Mandeep, but I'm very glad that you're here, yeah. You know, on Valentine's Day. So what we're going to look at today is the writing task 1, okay? And in particular, we're looking at when you have 2 different charts in the question, okay, and how you deal with that. So we'll be looking at the language, and we'll also be looking at the structure that you need to use for this type, okay? So this is the example question that we're going to use today. So you can see here that we have a table and we also have a bar chart, okay? And if you look at the content, what we're looking at in each of these, one is about the reason for traveling, and one is about the places that people are going to. So the topics are different, okay? So that means that you deal with each of them separately. That's the most important thing to start with. You're not comparing across the 2 charts. You are looking at one and then you are looking at the other, okay? So let's start by looking at the table, and you can see here the task question that you would get. And let's look at the data, okay? So what type of chart are we looking at, first of all? Okay, yes, Patricia. Hi, Patricia again. Yeah, table. We're looking at a table here. Okay. And what specifically is being measured in the table? Okay, very good. The number of visits where and by who? Okay, very good. Visits abroad by UK residents, and how are we dividing up these visits? Okay, very good, Rodolphe. The reason for the visit, okay? What is the purpose of their visit? Okay. Always very important to look at the timeline before you start writing. So what is our timeline here? Okay, from 94 to 98, everybody. So it is a table, but we do also have some graph movement there as well. Yes, Kiet, it's over a 5-year period. That's right, it's here as well. So given that it's 1994 to 1998, what kind of tense should we be using? Okay, very good. Everything needs to be in the past tense, but do pay attention to the time period before you start. Sometimes it goes into the future, so it's really important to check that, okay? Now we're going to do the same thing with the bar chart, okay? So as I said, it's a bar chart. What are we measuring specifically in the bar chart? Yeah, number of, yeah, okay, Vithya, I think, has got it there, and Fawaz, we're looking at the destination, so where are these people going, okay, divided into 3 different areas. And yeah, that's right, Barbara. And what is the time period? Exactly, Patricia, so we're looking at the same 5-year period. So again, everything is going to be in the past tense. Okay. So let's look at the structure. Okay, how are you going to divide up your answer? Okay. Sorry, Mez, what would you like me to repeat? I'll just go back. So the bar chart is the where the people are going, the destinations over the same time period, 1994 to 1998. So we are also going to use the past tense when we're talking about the bar chart. Yeah. Usually it's past tense. Just answering the question here from Yi Yuan. But you do have to be careful because it's not always. Okay, sometimes it's a prediction into the future. So you really need to check that before you start. Okay. So going back to the structure, same structure that we usually have for the task 1. Can anybody tell me what the 3 different elements are for a task 1 structure? Okay, very good. We're going to start with the introduction. Then we're going to move to the overview. And then, yes, Patricia, then we're going to look at the body. And since we have 2 different charts in this case, then we're going to have 2 paragraphs in our body. Okay. So how about the introduction? What are we going to put in the introduction, and generally how long is it? Okay, yeah, very good. So there, Sheherbanu, we're going to paraphrase the question, and it's going to be very short. Yeah, so maximum 2 sentences, I would say. Otherwise, you're putting too much detail in the introduction, and you're just going to paraphrase what the task says. Okay. Then we can put the overview next. So what are we going to put in the overview? Okay, very good. Yeah, Vithya and Patricia, the main trends, the key information. Yeah, exactly, Sheherbanu, the key things, the general outline that we've seen. Okay. So like here, 3 to 4 main, the points, the trends, the events, maximum 4 sentences here. You know, again, you want to keep it quite short, and you don't want to put any exact figures in the overview. It's a general overall. Okay. All right. Then we move into the body. So what is it important to include in the body? Yes, Barbara, the overview can be after the body. So you can put the overview after the introduction or at the end, okay? The important thing is that it's clear. Yes, exactly, Himanshu. So figures, facts, exact data in the body, very specific, okay? And maybe about 5 sentences in each one. Okay, you must put exact figures in the body. Okay, so you're using the language to describe what's happening, but you also need to use the figures as well. Maybe not all of them, but you definitely need to include figures. Okay, it's specific information. Okay. So that's our structure for this task 1, and actually for all of the task 1s, you want to follow this structure. Okay. So looking at the introduction, so remember what we just said, and a lot of people put it in the chat. You are given the information about the task, so all you need to do is just paraphrase that. Okay. So how can we paraphrase? How can we use different language? Any ideas? Yeah, very good, Patricia. And Kiet, we can use synonyms. Okay, very good. Kier, you can also change the word order. That's another way of paraphrasing. Very good. You can change active to passive or passive to active. Yeah, so you can use grammar to make the changes as well. Yeah, maybe you use nominalization. Very good. No sultan. The form of the word. Very good, Kier. These are all different ways that we can paraphrase. It's not just synonyms. Okay. And also be very accurate and precise with your information. If you're doing the timeline, you need to put the timeline in the introduction. Make sure that you've got the right timeline. Okay. So looking at the title that's there, which words there do you think we can paraphrase? You don't have to paraphrase everything, but which words would be easy to use a synonym or to change in some way? Yeah, okay, so shows definitely would be something. We could also change people. Abroad, Raoul, very good. Yeah, I think that's definitely one that you could change. Maybe visits as well. Okay, anything else we're going to change? And the time period. Yeah, definitely you would want to change the time period. Okay, so we're going to look specifically at shows and abroad, why they traveled and the time period. Okay, so you don't have to change everything, but there are certain words where it's easier to think of a synonym or a different way of doing it. Okay. The other thing that is very clearly put in the table is that this is UK residents. So we can add that to our introduction. Okay. Like Raoul said, yeah, maybe you could change that to British people. Okay. So what synonym can we use for shows? Okay, yeah, because we got results, we could say gives the results. Be careful with your word form. Illustrates, yes, Rudolph and Kier, that would be fine. Describes, depicts, Siddhartha, that's very good. Yeah, we're going to go with illustrates. Okay, and instead of saying why they traveled, we've put this earlier on, and we're going to say the. Okay, very good, Kier and Atta. So the reasons why people did what? Okay, yeah, so it's partly, yeah, maybe traveled. Where did they travel? We don't want to say abroad. What synonym can we use for abroad? Okay, very good, yeah, overseas. Okay, and it's people living in the UK, so that's another way of saying UK residents. Traveled overseas. Okay. You could say to other countries, Barbara, or yeah, that would be fine. Elia, that would work as well. Okay. And we want to change the time period as well. Okay, Patricia, very good. You could say from to. If the second word is and, what goes with and? Okay, very good, Barbara, Awad, Atta, between 1994 and 1998. Okay, so that's the table. So we talk about the table first, okay? Then we add information about the bar chart, okay? So again, looking at what's given in the task, what word there could we use, could we turn into a different word? Where can we use our synonyms with the chart shows their destinations over the same period? Any ideas? Okay, yeah, so again, shows, and I think destinations, you're absolutely right, Vithya, that would be an easy word to change. Okay. So if we want to, we're kind of balancing the two, we're comparing the two. So what conjunction, how are we going to join them? The table illustrates this. Not quite, we need a, okay, yes, while or whereas. We're continuing the sentence. So we need to use a conjunction. So whereas or while is really what we need to use. While is what we've gone for here. So the bar chart shows the, we don't want to use destinations. The destinations is in, okay, we've got places, countries, locations, okay, or regions we've got here. Okay, that they chose to visit. Okay, yeah, over or during would work very well. Okay, or within as well, whichever, that's very nice. So during this period. So same information, but we've changed the wording, we've changed the vocabulary, so we're not just repeating what's in the question word. Okay. All right. The other thing which is in the task is the number of people that were surveyed. This is the same for both the table and the bar chart. So you can add this at the end as a second sentence, okay? So what could we put there at the beginning before the table and the chart? Okay, very good, Barbara. Both the table and the chart. And then how can we continue? We need to think more. It's not really about, they're using the survey, so the table and chart are, it's quite a tricky one, this. Okay, are based on. That was a bit of a tricky one because we're talking about the survey. Okay, so instead of saying the results, we're saying that it's based on the survey of 100,000 people. Okay, so that's your introduction. Now we're going to look at the overview. Okay, and first of all, we're just going to have a look at the band descriptors. So we've got band 5, band 6, and band 7. If you don't have a clear overview, then you can't get more than band 5 in the task response. So it is very, very important. When it says clear, one thing is that you need to put it in a separate paragraph. That's one way of making it clear. You also need to have an introductory phrase, a linking phrase to show that this is the overview. Also in band 5, it says recounts detail mechanically. Does anybody know what mechanically means here? This is referring to the body paragraph. Okay, very good. Yeah, Patricia. And yeah, I think Abe, that's like it. It's just listing the information. So you're not connecting it anyway. You're not really using any language. So beware of just listing the information in the body. Okay. Band 6, you've got a clear overview, but band 7, you know, you are focusing on the main trends, the different stages, the things that are different, the things that are exceptions. Okay, so that's how you get a band 7 in your overview. Okay. So again, as I said before, we're looking at these two separately. Okay, we don't need to connect them, so we need to give an overview for the table, and then we need to look at the bar chart. Okay. So before we do the overview, let's have a look at what happens here. So if we look over the timeline, what's a kind of general comment we can make about the figures? what happens, yeah, if you look at 1994 and then look at 1998, overall, we're seeing an increase. Okay, yeah, or exactly, yeah, people traveled more in 1998. So we've got an upward trend there for everybody, more or less, okay, for all of the different purposes. In terms of biggest numbers, smallest numbers, what can we highlight there? Yeah, I think we got that there, Vithya. Yeah, holidays, and Patricia, holidays are clearly, they have the largest numbers in all cases. Okay, so that would definitely be something that you would want to pick out. And again, yeah, at other reasons is quite a lot lower than the other ones. Okay, so that's definitely highest and lowest numbers that we can pick out there. Okay. Any exceptions that you can notice there? Any that are a little bit different? Yeah, with the other reasons, they're not quite such a steady progression as the other ones. Yeah, as Vithya said, there's some fluctuation there, and in the end, it's pretty much the same as we started. So again, that's something that you might want to bring out. Okay. Okay, so yeah, most people traveled for holidays, and the number of visits abroad increased over the period, but we have a little exception there for other reasons. Okay. So if we look now at the next one. So we need to do the same thing, okay? So if we look at the bar chart, what are the most significant trends that we can see there? Okay, so yeah, Western Europe, there was an increase in the figures for Western Europe, and yeah, as Vithya said, Western Europe is definitely the most popular by exactly Tita. That was the most popular destination by quite a long way. Yeah. Okay. Exactly as Rudolph says, Western Europe dominates. Yeah, North America is the least. What about the other two, North America and other areas? If you look at the is there a progression there between 1994 and 1998? Yeah, they're very similar. First of all, North America and the others, there's a very slight increase, but really the figures are very, very similar from 1994 to 1998. Okay, maybe you're making a very general statement here. Okay. So the most popular destination was Western Europe, as we said, and that number went up. And the other destinations didn't really see much of an increase, maybe a very slight increase. Okay. So let's go to writing our overview. Okay, so how do we need to start the overview? Okay, very good. Sharabanhu, Kier, and Ukash. Always overall at the beginning. Okay, you can say it is clear that, that's very good as well. You can also say in general. So what then do we need to put? We're talking, you're a bit ahead of Patricia. What kind of travel was the most popular? Okay, very good. Kier and Kiet, yeah, it's the holiday travel. Okay, was not just the most popular, but okay, very good. Patricia and Barbara, by far the most popular. Okay, by far the most popular. And by far the most popular, what? It's not really the destination, it's the Think about what's, okay, yeah, the reason, the purpose for going abroad. Okay, very good. Each year. And then we need to connect to our next point. You can, moreover, you would need to start a new sentence, Utkarsh, okay? Okay, good. While or whilst, Mandeep put, which is a very nice alternative, whilst. The total number of overseas trips increased over the period. Okay, so we've got two main points for the table. Okay, or rows went up, yeah. Okay, and then we're going to follow that with our overview for the bar chart. Okay, so by a large, this is another way of saying by far, by a large. Oh, we can also introduce by saying looking at the bar chart. You're close, Barbara, you're quite close, but this is, again, a little bit of a tricky one. It's actually by a large margin, okay, which is a very nice expression to use, and, you know, definitely there in the less common vocabulary, which is what gets you your 7 in the lexical resource for task 1. Okay, so by a large margin, okay, very good. The most popular travel destination was Western Europe. Okay. Okay, we're referring back to the Western Europe. Okay, very good. Atta, very nice. Which increased in popularity? And then we're comparing travel to North America and other regions remained. Well, we've got constant. You're right, yeah, you could say stable, but we need to put, okay, very nice. Galaxy Note 8, relatively constant, yeah, and Atta as well. Oh, virtually as well, Nursatan, that's quite nice. So again, you know, add in these adverbs, gives you a higher score with the vocabulary. You know, this is where you get your extra points in the vocabulary. Okay, so relatively constant, okay. So again, what we have in the overview is we have 2 overviews. We have one for the table and we have one for the bar chart. We're not combining them, okay? That will lead to confusion there, okay? So be very careful with that, okay? So we've got our introduction, we've got our overview. Now we need to go into the body and describe the details. So we're going to have one paragraph about the table, and then we're going to have one paragraph about the bar chart, okay? So as we said, so develop what you've started to talk about in the overview, giving some, you know, specific information. Very, very important, as I said before, in the body, use the figures, okay? Use the figures, very important, okay? So let's see how we can do that and think about a range of language that we can use to express this movement. So in 1994, 15,246 people, right? Okay, again, that was a bit of a tricky one, but this is a good way of including the fact that it's a survey without saying the same thing that's there. So 15,246 people surveyed traveled abroad. Okay, you're turning it into an adjective, you know, which shows a very nice use of the language. It shows that you can manipulate the form of the word. So again, it's what they're looking for, going to get you good marks in the grammar. Okay, so that's the number in 1994. Then we show the progression. So what can we put in the next gap? Actually, yeah, that's quite good, Patricia. We're thinking about the yeah, the movement, and you need to think about your grammar as well. Remember, we're adding extra information here. It's not a new sentence, it's additional information. Okay, compared to works, what we're looking for here is rising. Okay, so yeah, or increasing here. Yeah, so remember that ing form that you use to add additional information. And again here we've got the two exact figures, 1994 to 1998. We don't need to include all of the in-between figures. We're just giving the beginning and the end. Okay. Are you looking at the next one, Yuan? Because I think you're right. Yeah, so now we're going to, yes, okay, very good. So however, or in contrast, because we're going from a very high number to a very low number. So yeah, on the other hand, you can't use whereas because it's the beginning of a new sentence, okay? Whereas you would be continuing. In contrast, okay? In contrast, conversely, something like that, okay? And then we give the next numbers, okay? And we started here with the n number, and then we talk about where it comes from. So what can we put in the last one? Okay, very good. Yeah, followed by. So we've got the business, and then we've got family and friends. And again, we've used some synonyms here. We're not using relatives, we're using family. So we start with the highest numbers and we move down through in the order. Okay. Then we need to add some more details. So now we're looking at the total number of visits. So what could it be? Couldn't be whereas, Barbara. It would have to be followed by. What can we put after the total of, think about your tenses, guys. Okay, very nice. Yeah, I quite like ranged, increased, rose. Yeah, so we've got increased. All right. And then, so that's a movement, an upward movement. And then we're contrasting this with the other reasons where, you know, there wasn't really any increase at all. So, okay, exactly, Arnell, very good. However, the number traveling for other reasons. Okay, conversely as well, Sangeeta, that would have worked. Okay, very nice. Prima Katerina. Okay, stayed the same. We've got around 900 people. Okay, so we've covered all of the different categories, but we haven't talked about all of the figures. So try and pick out the figures that are most important: beginning, end, highest figures, lowest figures. Those are the ones that they want you to put in. Okay. Then we need to do the same thing for the bar chart. Okay, so we develop our overview, just to remind you there, and we give specific numbers, very, very important. Okay, so we have this: visits to the most popular destination increased. Okay, yes, good, very good. Everybody's got some nice adverbs in there: gradually, or steadily, significantly. Okay, so that's an adverb. From just around 20,000 in 1994 to okay, yeah. Just, do we have any synonyms for just? Okay, Vitya, you're nearly there. Slightly below, a little below, something like that. So again, you know, use this approximate language as well. That adds more words, for one thing. It's easier to get to your word count, but it also shows more variety of language. Okay, so we're basically giving more details of what we've said in the overview, and we've included the exact figures. Okay, then we're going to start talking about the other ones. So we're again making a comparison between the very large numbers for Western Europe. If we compare far, it's the other way around. So we've got big numbers for Western Europe, but if we look at other areas in North America, the numbers are far. Think about countable and uncountable here. Far. Oh, we're very close. Ekaterina, you get a prize. Far fewer. Okay, very good, Ekaterina. Far fewer people traveled. It's countable, so we need to use fewer. If it was uncountable, we could use less. Okay. So moving on, 1998, the figures were. Okay. Okay, so approximately, so yeah, around, Barbara, that would work as well. Yeah, approximately around 2,400 and 2,300 people. We're referring now back to the two ones. Very good, Keir, got it there, respectively. Okay, so we've got two areas, two figures. We need to show which one belongs to which. Okay. Having experienced, any ideas in those two? Oh, got relatively little growth. Okay, so we need to use after experienced, you're always going to use a noun. Okay, experienced little growth over the period. Okay, so more detail, more information, not all of the figures, but you definitely need some specific figures there. Okay. So I'm going to give some general exam tips now, but you can also see the full answer there with the introduction, the overview, and then the two body paragraphs. Okay, so you can kind of be reading that as I'm talking. So always make a plan, always spend a few minutes looking at the information, check the timeline, check the categories, what's being measured here, make sure that you're accurate, look for those overall trends. Sometimes when you get a table, when you first look at it, it can be a bit tricky, you know, it just looks like a lot of numbers, and you really need to just see, take a moment, what are the trends? Actually, there will always be some kind of trend there that you can talk about, okay? We don't need a conclusion, Abe, in the task 1. That's only for the task 2, okay? So always spend a couple of minutes planning and thinking before you start. Keep your task 1 to 20 minutes. You do really need the 40 minutes for the task 2. And again, we talked about this before, you know, you don't really have time to count your words. You need to practice handwritten answers, know what 150, 170 words looks like in your handwriting so that you don't need to count the words when you're there, okay? And try and practice as many different types as you can so nothing will you know, surprise you in the exam. So tables, bar charts, pie charts, different you know, measurements, different topics, as much as you can. All right. So that's the end of the presentation. So we can move to the questions now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Annalie, for the presentation. That was great. And yeah, And guys, if you have questions you'd like to ask, please add them to the Q&A, and you can vote for the questions you want us to discuss the most. So we have quite a few questions already to kick things off. The highest voted question is from Yuan, who has asked us, can you tell us about the different level of judgment for writing score between a band 5 and a band 8? So I think that's what makes the difference, I guess, between a band 5 and a band 8 writing.
Okay, first of all, I think the biggest difference is usually between a 6. So a 5 and a 6, you know, are a little bit similar. Then you've got quite a big difference going up to a 7, which is also actually a lot of people require a 7. To be getting a 7 or an 8, you know, you need to be using less common vocabulary. So you need to try, you know, don't just use, for example, in the graph, went up, went down, rose, dropped. Try and use plateau, try and use, you know, peaked, try and use by a large margin. These words that not everybody is going to be using. That's very, very important. Clarity is very important, so a clear structure is going to get you 7 and above. Using a range of linking phrases also is very, very important. And really for a 7, you know, the majority of your sentences would be accurate. So there would be a good proportion of your sentences that didn't have any mistakes at all. Don't have to be 100% accurate, but you know, you would have definitely most of the sentences would be accurate. And also using a variety of sentence structure, which is something that people sometimes forget, even for the task 1, you know, use different conjunctions, use ing forms, use prepositions, you know, really show that you can use, you know, a variety of language. I suppose just to put it all in a nutshell, it's someone with a 7 and above shows that they can manipulate the language, that they understand how the language works, and they can be flexible in the way that they answer it. Someone who's getting a 5 and below is not showing any flexibility. So there would be a lot of repetition of vocabulary, a lot of repetition of sentence form. That would be the main difference. So flexibility is one of the things that you're really looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that, Annalie. I'd also add that the importance of an overview as well is a real difference between a band 5 and above. You need to be able to pick out the main trends in task 1. So you're not just describing the detail one by one, but you've managed to identify the most important features of the graph, and you put that in your overview. And that kind of leads quite nicely into Awad's question, which is what kind of information should be mentioned in the conclusion? And I think if we're talking about task 1, maybe you'd like to give some insight into this, Annalie.
Yeah, so task 1, you are going to be writing an overview. There isn't any conclusion, okay? And it's very, very important that you don't try to analyze or interpret the data in any kind of way. It's purely description, okay? So the overview contains the main trends. So you would be looking at perhaps all of the, if it was a line graph, all of the categories had an upward trend, okay, or a downward trend. That's an overall trend that you can see. Or you can compare, maybe 2 of the lines went up and 1 of the lines went down. So that you would bring out. Perhaps one of the lines is much higher, like we had with the Western Europe. One category is much higher or much lower than the other ones. So then you're picking out the ones that are an exception. So I think if you think about it in a way as if you had to describe this chart or this table to somebody in a couple of sentences, what would you say? Yeah, you can't give them any detail, but what would you say? What's the general overall thing that it's telling us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Annalie. Barbara is asking, are we going to make a webinar of task 2 before February 23rd? And that is very likely, Barbara. Probably next week we can do a task 2. If you have a suggestion for a specific task 2 topic you'd like us to cover, please put it in the chat and we can see what we can do. I'd just like to say we also offer a speaking evaluation service. This is a paid for service, and you would have a mock speaking test with a qualified examiner, either Annalie or myself or another one of our qualified examiners, and they're able to go through the speaking test with you and give you feedback on your performance. So if that's something you're interested in, you can find it on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com. So I'll just quickly go back to, because we have got a lot of questions to get through. Kier is asking, can I use shortened forms of words like don't instead of do not in writing tasks 1 and 2?
No. Very simple answer. Don't use any contractions. Write everything out in the full form. Also, don't use anything like etc. or IE, or even what I had today, somebody just put you instead of writing out you. These kind of forms, they're not acceptable in academic English. So everything written completely, fully, no abbreviations, no contractions. Okay. And no informal language either, just to add that as well.
Definitely. Hi there, Abe. You have a question about, would handwriting affect our band score for the paper-based examination? And
it would have to be very, very bad. I mean, it would have to be completely impossible to read for it to mean that the examiner couldn't actually read the language, and then there's nothing they can do. But I think bear in mind that examiners are very used to people crossing things out, putting arrows and stars and writing things in the wrong order. So, you know, don't worry too much about that. It's not about having a beautiful piece of handwriting or a, you know, beautifully written report. Just, you know, make sure that you've done everything that you need to do. So it's not really going to affect it unless it's impossible to read.
Great. Have another question here from Jabez. Are we penalized or marked negatively if we exceed 180 words? I assume this is for the task 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we're talking about the task 1, no, there's no penalty in terms of a maximum number of words. There's only the penalty for being below 150. However, bear in mind that you've got 20 minutes. So, you know, you shouldn't really need to write more than, say, 180. And you may lose a little bit of coherence if you are writing a very long answer. You know, they say 150 because you should be able to pretty much describe it in, you know, 150 to 180 words. But there's no penalty for being too long.
No, definitely not. Great. Galaxy has a question here. When we're talking about charts which describe the future, which tense should we use?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's actually specific expressions that you should use because this is a prediction, it's a forecast, it's not just the future. So they would be expressions like, it is predicted that, and then you would use will in the sentence that follows. Same vocabulary, so it is predicted that sales will increase dramatically. Or it is anticipated that, or it is forecast that. So that would be the kind of language that they would want to see if there is a timeline that goes into the future.
Yeah, definitely. Jeba has another question. Are punctuation, or rather is punctuation counted as a word? So is punctuation included in the word count?
No.
No. No, it's not. But all other words and symbols.
And numbers are counted, but not any punctuation features, no.
Definitely. So Fawaz has a question here. Can the questions be about more than two figures? So, there might be maybe three different graphs that we need to describe.
It's very unlikely. It is possible to have, for example, three pie charts that have the same information over three different time periods. But that's a different situation because you would then, talk about all three pie charts together. I personally, and maybe Jamie can add to this, have only ever seen two charts in a question when you have a different topic in each of the charts.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've never seen more than two charts in an IELTS question, for sure. Great. We have a question here from Rahul. How to manage time?
You mean time management? Yeah. Not timelines. Okay, you need to do a lot of practice. You need to do a lot of practice, timed practice. As well, there's no point being able to write a brilliant task one in an hour and then, having to do it in 20 minutes in the actual exam. Be aware that the overview is really important. So it's better to have an overview and then something in the body than a very long body and no overview, because that's specifically something that the examiners are looking for. But I think really, practice and timing yourself is really the best way to work on your time management.
Definitely. Thank you, Annalie. Kier is asking, will we do a webinar about writing a discussion essay? And yeah, I think that would be a really good topic for next week's webinar. We could look at discussing both views. That's what we haven't covered yet. So definitely, thanks for that, Kier. We'll plan one on that topic for next week. Okay. And our next webinar will be next Thursday at the same time as well, so in advance. We still have a lot of questions to get through, so I'll continue. Abe has asked, should we use bombastic language? Does this have an effect on our score? I'm guessing by bombastic, kind of maybe more informal. Yes, it is.
Yeah, or kind of maybe over flowery. Maybe that's what I was thinking. Don't use bombastic language, okay? Use academic language. So it's quite neutral. You're not going to put anything in it like fantastic or amazing or any of these very descriptive or poetic words. That's a different kind of language. That's literary English. This is academic English, so it should be very neutral, okay? And also no slang, no informal language as well. So that purely academic neutral language that's in the middle, I guess, between slang and literary English.
Yeah, excellent. And Zawad is asking, what is the maximum number of words for the answer?
There is no maximum. But you don't need to do any more than 150. I mean, a good answer was probably 160, 170. There's no maximum given.
Yeah, exactly. Nika has said that maybe your sound isn't so clear, Annalie. We just wanted to check, is the sound clear from both of us? If you can let us know in the chat, that would be great. So just want to make sure you can all hear us okay. Let's see, we have another question here from, there's quite a few we have to go through here. So Jabez said, in my first IELTS exam, I got a 7 in writing, but in the second, I got a 5.5. Can you state the reason? Um, well,
It's very hard to say the reason, obviously. I can make a guess, but this is very much a guess because obviously I don't know what you wrote in the first one or in the second one. However, if you misunderstood the question, then it's possible that you got a very low mark for task response. And that would account for it being much lower. I can't really think of anything else. If you did get a 7, presumably your language, your grammar and your vocabulary is not, there's no issue there. So I think it could only really be misunderstanding the question, or, you know, writing a solution essay when it was an opinion essay or something like that. That's the only thing that I could think of. So, I mean, the thing to take away from this is that it's very important to, you know, look at the question very carefully, think about it, and plan it before you start writing.
Definitely. Thank you, Annalie. We have a few requests for different tasks we can look at here. One is for looking at a map, and the other is looking at a diagram. And that's something we can definitely cover in a future webinar. These will be regular webinars on Thursday. So we will plan these topics for future webinars for sure. I'd just like to shout out again for our speaking evaluation service. If you're interested in improving your speaking and having a mock speaking test with a real IELTS examiner, that's a service that's available on our website. You can book a session and we can go through the speaking test with you and give you very specific feedback on what you need to do to improve your score. So that is something that's available on IELTS onlinetest.com. So feel free to book one of them. I think we have enough time for one more question. So let's see. Lots of requests here. We have a question from Ekaterina, who's asked, how crucial are punctuation mistakes? Commas, colons, semicolons. How important are they?
Okay, first of all, I'd be careful about using colons and semicolons. Colons particularly, it's you know, it's usually connected to listing, and that's quite a negative thing to do in either of the tasks. If the mistakes in punctuation affect how easy it is to follow what you're saying, then, you know, you will definitely lose marks in the grammar section. Generally speaking, there can be a tendency to write very long sentences, you know, which is perfectly okay in some languages. In English, we don't tend to have these very long sentences separated by commas. So, you know, try and make sure that each of your sentences has a very distinct point, and you're not just, you know, adding information and just using commas. So it's really about, you know, comprehension.
Okay, fantastic. Well, everyone, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. We didn't manage to get through all your questions, but you feel free to post them onto our Facebook page. The link is in the chat there. We will be having a future webinar next week on Thursday, so please register for that. This is a free webinar, so if you can just share the page and the link with your friends, it would be great to have more people involved. And we look forward to seeing you soon. I'd just like, before we go, to say a big thank you to Annalie for presenting today. So thank you very much, Annalie.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Yeah, next Thursday, I think we should say. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Good luck if you've got your exam coming up, yeah?
Definitely. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.